Welcome to DSM's Black Art Matters series. We're here today with Ania Lyons, a Dallas-based actor and performer. Welcome, Ania.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
I'm pretty good. Glad to be here.
Thanks for being here, yeah. You ready to jump in?
Yeah.
All right, so our first question we have for every artist on the series is, what does Black identity mean to and for you?
To and for me? I feel like, for me, Black identity is knowing where you come from and standing up for the things that you believe in as a Black human now. Yeah.
So how do you believe your Black identity intersects with your artistic identity?
Ooh. I feel like it's mostly in the roles I play. I find that I'm usually like a little kid or like ingenue roles. Mm-hmm. So I work a lot in children's theater, and I hope that that's like little kids will like look at me as like the ingenue character and see themselves as they can be one of those. Yeah, somebody who's a little bit more lighthearted and not just like in a different section of their own in a show.
Right. Like
they blend in with everyone else.
Yeah. So I feel like that goes into this notion of, typically Black actors being cast in the stereotypical roles. Yeah. And it sounds like through your career, you've kind of been able to go against that.
Yes, it's been really nice not to have played like the stereotypically Black roles, but there has been like circumstances where I've been like the only Black person in the show, and that's been odd. So
can you expand on that a bit about like what was odd about it, or how did it make you feel?
And I don't know. I don't really think I noticed it until other people did. Like my friends coming to see shows and saying, everybody looks the same on stage except for you for some reason. And for a while I was like, oh, it's because like I'm like a dancer. But no, a lot of the times it's just because like I am the only Black person in the show. I mean, I do mostly do musicals, and like classical musicals are where like most of my heart lies. So I like to do those more, but also people like to whitewash those a lot more too. So I'm trying to balance out that love as well as kind of being the only person there who's a little bit different has always been strange.
So when you're in those rehearsal rooms and you're the only Black individual in those rehearsal rooms and in those spaces, what support system, is there a support system in place in those rooms? And then if there's not, how do you cope with that outside the room once you leave the rehearsal space?
Well, it's only been an issue for me recently, really. A lot of the times I go to the equity deputy, there we go, the union member that's in the cast and is kind of in charge of relaying things from the cast to the stage management team. So if anything goes wrong, I know I can always go to them to talk, or people are being a lot more aware of like, a lot more aware of diversity and aware of the people that they're in the room with. Yeah. So if they see something that happens, they're a lot more inclined to say something now, which is nice.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier, you have this love for, classical musicals, and that tends to lead to you being the only Black individual in the room. What do you think has brought us to this point where those musicals are seen only for white individuals and we haven't made that turn yet?
I think it's for the people that go see the shows too, because I feel like for classical musicals, those were more towards a white audience. So those are the shows that they're still seeing now because those are the ones that are familiar with them. And a lot of POC are like, no, that's an old show, that's a white show, and they don't really want to go do that. So that does make it pretty difficult. I do really love classical musicals, but it's a hard thing of bringing the culture from now back to then too.
And whose responsibility do you think that is? Is that on the theater? Is that on, writers to refresh those pieces? Is that on actors of color to try to be more present in those pieces?
I feel like
all of the above.
Yes, all of the above. I've noticed that in some like newly written plays and musicals, they emphasize in the first page of the script, these characters can be any race, color, gender, anything. But back then they weren't as adept on saying those things. And everybody was just like, oh, okay, you can be whatever you want. And now we're starting to revise those ways of thinking and we're trying to be like, okay, where can we take this apart and rethink it in a way that will be more inclusive, which is what I've been really enjoying lately. Especially being a Black person in Dallas, there's been a lot of really cool stuff that I've been able to put myself out there and do, even if it does make me a little bit uncomfortable. But it's been really exciting to try.
Yes, awesome. You mentioned earlier at the top of the conversation that you do a lot of children's theater and kind of that joy you feel seeing little Black and brown children see someone who looks like them on the stage and saying, oh, I can do that. Did you have that growing up through in the kind of beginning of your career, or even as a child?
No. I did grow up in a predominantly Black, like, dance studio. Like, I'm a dancer first. I've been a dancer for 15, 16 years now. Long time. So in my world, I was always surrounded by people that looked like me, even though they didn't really act like me, because the dance world and the theater world are way different. The theater world seems to be a little bit more kinder. So yeah, I grew up going to see musicals, but I never identified the fact of it being, oh, they're mostly white on stage. I've never really thought about that until I was older. But also my family is very based in who we are as Black people. So we like to go see Black-based shows. So I grew up going to see like Lion King, Dreamgirls, The Wiz, specifically those things because my family was really wanted Black culture to be influenced in my life.
So having that strong family support at such a young age, how did that shape not only how you mentioned kind of that infusion of Black identity from the very beginning, but also your artistic path moving forward and the work that you wanted to do?
Well, it's definitely made me a lot more determined than my peers. I feel like it has made me a lot sharper in different areas. It's helped me think on top of my feet very quickly, and it's made me very disciplined. I feel like I'm very outgoing and much more disciplined because I was grounded in the arts.
Love that. So over the past year and a half, the Dallas theater scene has gone through a reawakening of racial and social justice, and I am even hesitant to say a reawakening because that implies that it's all of a sudden here when that fight has been going on for generations at this point. But all of a sudden, after the murder of George Floyd, there is this kind of realization in our community that, oh, we got to do better. And, a year and a half has passed. There were a lot of promises that were made after the murder of George Floyd, and now we're seeing the reopening of our industry with more theaters producing and presenting. Are you seeing promises being kept, or are you seeing promises being broken once again?
It's both sides of the table. There are some very prominent theaters in the area who are doing a fantastic job at trying to be very inclusive. There are some theaters who, even though they aren't saying anything, are actively doing things. And there's just some who need the entire force of the community on their back to finally make a change. Some of the places you'll see a casting announcement where it's all white and you're just like, of course. If you're like me, you'll scroll and see it and you'll be like, the community will get them for that, and I'm gonna sit here and
Just
watch
wait
the crossfire.
Yeah.
And 10 minutes later, little do they know, the entire community is on their back.
Yep.
This is wrong. This is an injustice. You need to do better. And even after they're being told things to do better, they are willfully still not trying. Like, there are some theaters who have disappointed me so much because they were making such good progress, and then that progress was just beaten right down to the ground by one mistake that they made. I'm very hopeful for the future of what inclusion in DFW looks like, but we still have a very, very long way to go, and it is just little steps and fighting and speaking out as much as we possibly can. One little voice can make a huge difference, or you can sway one person's opinion, and if you can do that, you can make a huge difference.
So as a working performer, where's a line for you when it comes to, I just can't allow my time, talents, and efforts to be used in this space because this theater is not willing to make change? Is there a line for you? And if there is, what is the line?
Yes, there is a line. It is casting an all-white show and then doing an all-black show right after it. It's doing that kind of thing and just hoping that everyone will hop on board with it. Especially people that have been loyal to your theater and have participated in things that, like, you just asked them to do. And they think after they make a mistake, they can still ask you to do those things. But it doesn't work the same way.
Yeah.
Especially if you hurt someone in that way after there's been so much progress.
Right.
And just taking a huge step back like that it's really just a kick in the back of the knee. It's bad.
Yeah. I've heard many of my colleagues at different theaters say, well, we just need them to show up. And my response usually is, define them, because now you're getting into this world in which you're lumping all BIPOC individuals into a monolithic nature, which is, we are not. But why should they show up? And that's my response back to those administrators and my colleagues of define them and know why should they show up to your theater.
Exactly.
For you, why do you show up?
Well, I show up because I love what I do. I just really love my work. I don't care what it is, whether it's choreographing or performing, assistant stage managing, whatever it is. I just love to do it. I love the connections that I make along the way. I've made most of my best friends in this community. So, yeah, it's a sense of community, it's a love for the art, it's also a way to pay my bills. So that's why I do it.
Love that. You yourself also working a lot in children's theater. A question I have for you is that we also see a lot of theaters tend to use education as a way to show that, oh, look, we're serving a diverse population. So it's not true. It comes across not authentic. It comes across as we have to check a box. What is your thoughts or opinions on that, or have you seen theaters do that?
I have seen theaters do that. I think Dallas Children's Theater does a fantastic job of inclusivity of the children that they bring into the theater, especially for their student matinees. They try to make sure that everybody has a way in to see some art, to gain some culture, to see this book that they've been reading for years and years and years finally on stage in front of their face. And I think it really shows when the kids that they bring in, the people on stage also look like them. That's where the big thing is. If the kids that you're teaching come in and see a show where nobody looks like them, why would they want to see it? Why would they want to do that? There's no point.
Yeah.
They have to see people that look like them, enjoying themselves and loving what they do. if they're going to come into a place. And also, why would they want to go to a place where nobody looks like them anyway?
Right.
Why would they want teachers that don't look like them and do other things that they don't want to do?
And I'm curious, as a teaching artist, how do these conversations come up with your students of topics of social justice and racial equity? And when they do, how do you work through that in the classroom as a teaching artist?
I don't really see it racially very much. I feel like most of the kids that I've taught have been very diverse, and if they haven't, we've always tried to make sure the kids knew that everyone was welcome there. Like, if a boy wanted to wear a dress, they get to wear a dress. If a girl wants to be a superhero, she can be a superhero. We definitely try to include inclusion stuff like that in it, just to show that everyone's welcome. If a kiddo mentions something about a boy having too long hair because that's a girl's thing, we shut that down immediately in the kindest way that we possibly can, but we shut it down immediately because we want to make sure that everyone feels welcome. And if someone's being rude or mean, and of course they're kids, they're gonna say what they see, but they're not gonna know unless you tell them. Yeah.
And as a teaching artist, what do you say to theaters who use education or community engagement work truly as a PR checkbox? Look what we did. Aren't we great?
They're not doing the work. Like, they're not doing the proper work to be an influential theater. They're just kind of sitting on top of their pot of money and just throwing it to where they need it to go instead of into the things that really matter.
Yeah. One more topic I have for you in regards to being a working Black actor, but also being a working Black teaching artist is we definitely see pay disparity, both with actors of color, but also teaching artists of color. Have you experienced that in your career on both sides?
Not that I've noticed. Being a dancer in Dallas has definitely been a what's the word I'm looking for? An advantage. There we go. Being a dancer in Dallas has definitely been an advantage because there's not a whole lot of us who are fully trained dancers that grew up in that livelihood. So I tend to get paid a little bit more because I am dance captaining, or I'm swinging, or I'm doing something else backstage too, because I feel like I'm never doing like one thing for a show. So I've never really noticed it on that end. And when it comes to teaching, I am relatively new to it. I've been an assistant for like 2-3 years, but I'm still learning how things work in classrooms that I teach in, like in my classroom.
Thank you for sharing that. I have one final question for you before we wrap up today, and that is, what are your hopes for the Dallas theater scene moving forward? Knowing where we are right now, not being in the best place, what are your hopes for this community?
I hope that the older generation will listen to the younger ones coming up, like the mid-20-somethings. I have a lot of friends who went to Collin County Community College, and a lot of them are very upcoming in the theater scene, and they're also refusing to stay quiet, which I'm very proud of. So I hope that the older generation can learn from these 20-somethings who are speaking out and saying things against injustice, and I hope they take a step back and be like, they're saying something, maybe something is wrong. So I hope that happens. I hope more conversations are brought up. I hope more inclusive plays are put in seasons. I hope there's no more token Black shows. Oh my God.
Don't we all hope for that?
Just don't have one all Black show in your season. Just don't do it.
You know, February's coming up though.
And it's always in February. There are much better shows that they can find, and even if they do find an all-black show, make it something new, make it something different. Don't make it like a despair story, like, we're happy, hello.
We can smile.
It doesn't always have to be death and despair and family problems. I just hope for a generation of newness and breaths of fresh air and honestly just kindness towards one another.
I love that. Thank you so much, Ania, for taking your time to share with us today and sharing your talents with DSM. We appreciate so much everything that you've voiced with us today, so thank you so much.
Of course, I love being here.